Welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be talking about God and why he purposely keeps you small. Talk to check out Truth, first link, second link, Walk with God course, third link, donation if you'd like, and fourth link, self-improvement, calls for faith if you'd like to talk with me in private. So, why God purposely keeps you small sometimes, and for a longer period of time. You know, maybe you're stuck in an in-between, even between what's like coming and what was. And this phase is kind of like, you know, God knows when you're ready for something and when you're not ready for something. That's what makes God's plan perfect and his timing perfect. We don't know when we're inherently ready for something because, you know, sometimes, like, let's say, you know, if you're like a creator, for example, would you be able to handle God's calling for you as a creator if, you know, you haven't been prepared with the right character and stature and strength, in a sense, like unshakable peace as well, built in you. You haven't been built to the character you need to be able to handle that properly, you know, to be humble, peaceful, joyful, to build from the right place in your heart and to be in the right place in your heart and not to be swayed by any temptations and things like these. Like, are you that character yet? Right? That's what God is building in you. And we need to understand, like, you know, I think I understand now in hindsight, it's easy to say, like, I wasn't ready, for example, to do this right now that I was doing like before, because honestly, I was like, arguably, I wouldn't say I was like lazier, but I was just not ready in the sense that I was in, you could say spiritually a weaker place. I wasn't as peaceful or joyful in a sense, even in harder circumstances. I wasn't able to handle harder circumstances as well. You know, these are the things you only notice like after God has made you wait for a while, and then you kind of realize once you're doing your calling, like, you know, this delay here was for a reason because I just wasn't ready. You know, the character wasn't built. I didn't have the stature for it. I wasn't able to do this calling with God. And that's really where you realize in hindsight that everything God did was perfect. And in hindsight, everything makes sense, right? You can look back and trace all the steps and like understand, okay, this is why nothing happened in this waiting season, because it's like this is where I was being built. And it's that, you know, what's coming versus what was, you know, going in that in between where silence is and nothing really, you don't make progress maybe, but you are making progress. It's a silent progress, right? It's that progress where you don't see what's happening because it's mostly happening inside of you, who you're becoming, you know, your character, stature, the way you're thinking, the way your thoughts and views are, you know, when you're changing with God, reading the truth and worshiping God and coming to understand God, really what he's doing, and when he's showing you how to change and making you more disciplined and focused, and you're slowly letting go of old habits and I hope everything else, you know, that's bad for you. You just have to actually listen to God and be in silence and really contemplate on yourself a lot, you know, whether it's on walks, you know, just sitting in silence, praying, whatever, wherever you would like to contemplate, or just throughout the day as you encounter orchestrated scenarios by God. And this is why it's so important to understand everything is orchestrated by God as well. So even like this, when you walk with God, especially, everything in your life, you're submitting to God's orchestrations. He's orchestrating the perfect plan for you and the path ahead. So he's not letting you make mistakes, in a sense, like he's closing certain doors so you don't make, you know, the bad opportunities, you don't take them and they're closed away from you, whether it's people or like jobs or, I don't know, business opportunities, whatever it is for you. Like that's the same in my life as well. Like God has saved me from many bad things because I'm on this orchestrated path with him, and he guides me on many things as well. And that's the nice part, is like, you know, God is working even if it feels silent in that season where you're growing in between of what's coming and where you were and who you were specifically. And that in between is really important, even though it's hard. It's probably the hardest phase in a sense, because that's where you're growing a lot, that's where you're doing your inner work, that's where you don't really, maybe you don't feel as motivated, depending on who you are, of course, on how you feel. Not everybody feels the same. You don't maybe feel as motivated, you're going through hardship circumstances that aren't there to level you up to the character you need to be able to handle your calling. You know, it's not like David was just like anointed straight away, like, here, just have a crown or something in your head and be a king. Like, that's not how it works, right? You actually have to go through trials and hardships, and then, you know, David became a king. You know, it's the same thing for us with whatever your calling is. Like, we have to go through hardships and understand ourselves, and, you know, this could be in any journey, whatever your job or calling or whatever God is, in a sense, making you to do, in a sense, what He's preparing you for. Or, well, God doesn't really force us to do anything, but you know, if you're actually submitting to God, in a sense, He's making you prepared for it, for the path. So He's making you do something for Him, in a sense, if you're willing to submit. So when you're on that path, just understand that silence and that lack of progress and that like slowness is there for a reason. And we all feel this, and I feel it too sometimes. And you know, sometimes I ask myself and ask God, maybe, you know, why does it feel so slow? But it's like, I know in the back of my head though, it's there for a reason. And even though sometimes nothing makes sense, and sometimes you know it kind of makes sense, but you don't see God's plan, and you don't see what heaven is orchestrating, in a sense, and what's happening in heaven before it happens on earth. We don't see that God has laid out a plan for us already, and you know, everything's, in a sense, you know, the destiny and fate exists. And you know, it's sometimes easy to forget that and kind of like live it too much in our heads in the moment, and you know, not remember that God is really in control, and you know, everything is fine, and we just need to move ahead, do the best we can, and live the best life we can in terms of making the best choices possible, so we can have the best outcomes that are good as possible with God. And that's really what God wants us to do, is to make the best decisions. Of course, we're free to do whatever we want, you know, in decisions and the path we walk, but you know, I think there's really only one good path in life, and that's to walk with God. And that's to actually make good decisions the best you can and avoid making mistakes. Unless, you know, that mistake is there to learn something, perhaps. Sometimes we just make mistakes, not necessarily randomly. Sometimes we make mistakes just because we're human. Perhaps they could be avoided in some sense in hindsight, but sometimes it's just orchestrated on our path, so we happen to make something and learn something, to be honest. And it's sometimes unavoidable to an extent, because we're just not sometimes smart enough, or we're caught in the moment. But yeah, just remember, you know, we all have that slow season, and that is there to build your character, and we still always keep leveling up our character, even when you are already making progress. Like, I could say I'm making progress right now, and I feel, you know, good, and I feel like my character has changed a lot from what I started. And you know, I was very timid, you could say, even like a little bit scared and kind of like fearful, and like, you know, obviously I was getting used to kind of like walking with God and my faith, and you know, everything felt very illusionary for me at that time. And you know, that build-up phase took me like months pretty much, and I didn't even mind the fact that it took a long time, to be honest, because I kind of knew that I was building that character deep inside my mind. Like, I felt like I was doing my calling already, but I wasn't like ready to do my actual calling, because honestly I still have the focus, I didn't have the character built. Like, I was still like struggling a lot with like feelings and emotions and different negativities and, you know, situations and circumstances. I didn't have that unshakable, you know, character yet built by God. And that's kind of what I've arrived at now, is like, obviously I'm still always leveling up with God and making changes significantly in my life and coming to understand myself better. But once you reach a certain point, you build that unshakable character, and that's when you know this is what God was building, so you're ready for your calling, or whatever you're doing with God, you know, living life. And this is where you can actually move more freely and joyfully and peacefully in every situation. That's what I noticed personally. It's like, just comparing, like, let's go back like 4-5 months from now, and I was like a completely different person. And every week with God, I felt like I was changing, and that was the impressive thing for me, especially at the start, is like how much I was changing every week. And you know, that really kept me motivated, is seeing the change in myself as well, and like understanding this is honestly what God is building in me. And you know, even though I was like making very slow progress, I was still kind of like very happy, because I was changing on the inside and, you know, making soul growth, and that's really what matters. And that, you know, all those outward results come after you've made the changes on the inside, I feel like. And that's what really made me happy, is like after like 3 months of, you know, working hard on my soul growth and, you know, my walk with God, I changed a lot, and I was really happy, just, you know, like sitting in peace and joy and like that stillness, you know, just in nature. I was just like sitting, and I was really happy and content with myself, in the sense that like I had made all this progress in my soul growth and understanding the truth and God, and I felt really peaceful and satisfied because of that. I didn't feel satisfied because I ate more food or because I had more temporary flesh pleasures or that I achieved some outward results and got $1 million. I didn't feel good because of something outward result that I achieved. I achieved inner results which made me feel really good and stronger and more at peace with myself and with God and on my journey. And it doesn't matter what like happened on the outside, I was able to be calm on the inside and peaceful and enjoy my life and the path I'm walking on, actually have fun doing the things I was doing and not worry about everything. And that's what God taught me in that silent season, waiting season between what's coming and what I was. And that's kind of like, in hindsight, what I understood from it, and even at the time, you know, after I had walked with God for a while. And that's the most important thing you could take away, is like, once you reach that point, you'll probably have the same realization I had, you know, if you walk the right path and you're not like tempted by all these things and constantly thinking about outward things. You know, everybody has a different path, of course, and how long it takes is up to you and God. And of course, a lot of times it's about your pursuit and coming to understand yourself. But that's really what I gained personally. I hope this video can help and motivate you as well if you're on this path and you're still struggling, or you're kind of in that waiting season or in between season, or you just feel like God is like waiting on you or to level up, or you're like feeling God is slowing you down, or if you don't feel like any results are coming in your life. Just remember, things are up as have been on a soul level, not just, you know, on our outward level, on our, you know, flesh world, in our earth. It's happening in heaven as well, and on your soul, the growth in your soul. Put an amen if you agree with this and share this video. I hope this helps. See you in the next video. Amen.